You are listening to the Cat Breeder Sensei Says podcast, the show that supports the reputable breeding of pedigree cats. I'm your show host, April Catito, and in this episode, we're going to be discussing the option of selling your kittens to another breeder with breeding rights. We'll dive right into that after this short message.
Do you want to learn how to become a successful breeder of pedigree cats? Now you can. For the first time ever, enroll in an online training course that takes you step by step through everything you need to know to get on the right track. Visit catbreedersensei.com to sign up today and use code podcast21 to get $25 off.
Okay, we're back. Now, you most certainly have gotten some messages either through email or through Facebook Messenger or another social media account or through voicemail from someone that you know or maybe you don't know who is asking for a kitten with breeding rights. So if it hasn't happened yet, I can assure you that it will most definitely happen. And when it does, you have to make a decision on whether or not you are willing to do that. Now, ultimately, the choice is yours whether or not to sell a kitten out of your cattery with breeding rights to another breeder. But this podcast episode will give you some things to consider before you make that final decision. First of all, let's discuss the contract that you have with the breeder of your parents. Read over your contract again and see if you have permission to sell kittens with breeding rights from that line. A lot of times, there are restrictions on what you can or cannot do with the kittens that come from that particular cat. So if you have permission to sell kittens with breeding rights, then you've passed the first hurdle. If it is a restriction and you are not allowed to sell kittens from that particular parent, then you are not able to do that. Sometimes they will allow breeding rights to be sold from second generation offspring, but not first generation offspring. So you just have to review your contract and make sure that you understand what the terms are on the cat that you have. A lot of people don't read that part of the paragraph in the contract because it's not something that they're thinking about doing. And then when it comes time to make that decision on whether or not to sell a kitten, they go back and check their contract and maybe find out that they're not able to do that at all with this particular cat. And you have two cats to check. You have your male and your female contract from any mating pair that you are considering selling a kitten from. Next, you want to look at the health. And that's such a big term and such a big word that we're going to use here because personally, I think it's the most important part of deciding to sell a kitten with breeding rights to a breeder. So the health of the parents is one factor, and then the health of kittens from that parent is another factor, or part B of that equation. So obviously, if it's the first litter for the queen and even the sire, if you're they relatively new parents, then you don't really have a history of these cats and their offspring, and you don't know any health issues that are going to rear its ugly head in the upcoming years. So selling a kitten from two brand new producers probably isn't the best idea because when you sell a kitten to a breeder, and it has problems, you're just passing those health issues off to another breeder, and that is not what our goals are. We are here to protect and preserve our breeds, and that means sustaining a healthy line of cats that can carry on for generations. Another thing to mention is the DNA testing and health screening results on the particular kitten that you are considering selling. So we kind of already know by now that we need to do DNA testing and your regular screenings like HCM, your echocardiograms, and your hip dysplasia. Those are specific for Maine Coons. So each breed has their set of tests and screenings that need to be performed to make sure that your cats are in the healthiest state before you use them for breeding. When you're considering selling a kitten for breeding, you have to look at the results of both of the parents and take into consideration the DNA testing. And let me explain why. Some breeders, and I actually have a female who is a carrier for PK deficiency. So I know that it's a recessive gene and it requires two parents to actually create this gene in the kittens. However, they can certainly pass that gene down, the PK deficiency gene, and the kitten would be a carrier. So if your goal is to discontinue breeding PK deficiency out of the lines, which that is one of my goals, then you would definitely not want to sell a kitten with breeding rights that is a carrier of PK deficiency. So, knowing the DNA tests for your parents, and then knowing if it's possible they could be a carrier of any recessive or a trait that you don't want to get passed down, then you can do the necessary testing on that kitten to see if they are a carrier, in fact, or not, before making the decision to let that cat continue on reproducing. So a lot of people claim like, oh, I have a healthy cats, they're healthy. And, until they are older, we don't really know that because some of these issues, they don't show up until the cat starts to get a little bit older. So to make the claim that, you have a healthy cat and maybe it's 8 months old or 9 months old, it's kind of premature to say because it's still a kitten and it hasn't had time to grow into those disorders or those conditions that may definitely come up later. So I think that the first consideration is how old is the cat that you're going to use for reproduction? How many kittens and offspring has this particular cat had? And how old are those kittens? And how much history do you know about those? This is a reason why staying in contact with the owners and keeping that relationship open and friendly is important because you want to know your lines. You want to know the health and condition and status of all of the kittens that you have out there. So it's important to have a database or a way of keeping track of your kittens so that you can check in on the health of them. I actually have a cool system that automatically sends an email on the cat's birthday and gives them a happy birthday. It asks them for a photograph of the kitten so I can see what it looks like now, and then says, ask for a few questions about how's it doing, is there any, health conditions that have come up, just keeping tabs on the little kitten and seeing how everything is going. And they'll respond to that and let me know, exactly what is going on with the cat. So I love that it's automated and I can keep tabs on the health of all the kittens basically by putting everybody in this automated system that I have. So it's really important to keep track of your kittens and where they're at and the condition and the health status of them so you know your lines. So once you know your lines and you feel confident that the cats in question are producing healthy kittens that are 5 years old or 4 years old, whatever you claim to be a good amount of time, it's completely up to you, then maybe you can open up the consideration to sell kittens from those particular cats. So that's one of probably the biggest things that you could take into consideration is the health of the parents and the health of the offspring that they've produced already. Next, we'll look at temperament. Temperament definitely gets passed down into the kittens. So to sell a kitten with breeding rights, you definitely want them to have a good temperament. You want them to be friendly and social and come from lines that are equally as social and inviting to people. So take the temperament of the parents into consideration. And again, what happens when you put those two parents together? Are the parents of these kittens breed standard? So we want to protect and preserve our breed, and that is by reproducing what is as close to breed standard as we possibly can while keeping health temperament, and type are most important factors in that order. Have the cats gotten any recognition through cat shows? Are they breed standard? Do they fit the requirements? And is this cat an example of what you want to continue to reproduce? And you want to pass that on to another breeder, and then they're going to start reproducing the type of this cat as well. So I know some breeders will actually hold a kitten back that they think is breed standard and of high quality and take it to shows as a kitten and see how it fares with the judges before they will consider using it for breeding. So if you are not good at making that judgment call, or you're not really confident in knowing what breed standard is, and you have any doubt in your mind, then take the kitten to a cat show and see what the judges say. Enter them into a show before you consider selling that particular kitten to another breeder. Now let's talk about the buyer of kittens with breeding rights. If you're new, you probably don't have a lot of established relationships with breeders yet. In fact, it's kind of hard to break into that little clique, and find the people that you like to interact with and engage with. So it does take time, and not everybody is for everybody else. But once you start talking to breeders, because they do like to talk, and there are wonderful, wonderful people out there, and hopefully you can make some connections in our No Judgment Zone Cat Breeder Community Facebook group. If you have not joined that group yet, go there right now and do it. We are all in the positive movement, and we want to be there and supportive for each other, regardless of the breed. No judging, just friendly advice and sharing of knowledge. So go join the No Judgment Zone Cat Breeder Community on Facebook if you haven't yet. So anyway, hopefully you can make some connections in there and find some people that you share common goals with when it comes to running a cattery and breeding kittens, and just have some things in common that you can talk about, and become friends with these people online. And those are probably the people, maybe not in this group if that's not the case, but befriending other breeders who share common goals as you. Those are really the people that you want to buy kittens from, and you want people to buy, you want them to buy kittens from you. So you really should have a common goal in mind. You should share the same objectives. You should share the same ethics. You should share the same breeding guidelines, and how you run your cattery. No, not everybody is going to be exactly the same, but you should be in line with your beliefs as far as health, temperament, and type, and knowing what the expectations are and what realistically you can expect when you buy a breeding kitten. For example, I sold a breeding kitten to a good friend of mine, and she was a beautiful black tortie with white girl, left here healthy. Parents were healthy, but at 10 months old, she was diagnosed with mega esophagus. And we, talked about it collectively. We were calm about it. We didn't shout at each other and make accusations, and we didn't point fingers. And together we were like, yeah, she needs to be spayed. We do not want to continue that, and so I'm replacing that kitten for her. So if we didn't share the same beliefs about how things should be handled if something comes up, then it wouldn't have happened like that. She would have immediately went to her little groups and put an ugly story out, and said whatever they say, how you see the complaints on Facebook. And we just don't share that belief. We both agreed, and we've discussed this before we decided to work together, that we don't like to smear names on Facebook, that we both understand that they're just animals and that we cannot control everything that happens with them. We can't guarantee 100% that something's going to come up, whether it's idiopathic or genetic. that is recessive, or, just so many things can happen. There's so many problems that can appear. We've agreed and we discussed how to communicate about that and how we will handle that if something comes up. And, it was very peaceful, and, we agreed that this is how we handle it. And we like that. We have that in common. So I think that is very important that you know your buyer and you share some common beliefs. If it's a new breeder, you may immediately want to just say, no, I'm not going to sell a kitten to you. But you don't necessarily have to say no, because new breeders need kittens too. And we're here to support each other. And believe me, it's challenging to think about that, because it's just kind of a, I don't know, it's just challenging to think, oh man, a new breeder. But you shouldn't automatically, turn them away right off the bat. Get to know them, and, make that decision once you have developed a little bit of a relationship first. And a new breeder should also understand that they need to be patient, that getting a good kitten, a healthy kitten from a breeder that they can actually work with and maintain a relationship with for many years is way more important than just getting a kitten right now. So, if you explain that to them, then, maybe you guys can create and nurture a working relationship that both can be beneficial to both people. That's really what I strive for. In dealing with newbies and existing breeders, I'm always looking for a way that we can benefit each other in one way or the other. So, if an experienced breeder comes along and wants to buy a kitten from you with breeding rights, I think the same thing applies. You should get to know each other. You should have a relationship that is mutually beneficial. You guys your beliefs are in line with each other. You have the same goals for your cattery, and you feel like working together is the right choice. So some important things to consider, when you're dealing with a buyer who wants to buy a kitten with breeding rights. So how much should you charge for a kitten with breeding rights? I did a podcast episode on pricing, how much you should charge for your kittens. And it's kind of a soapbox issue where people have a very strange and weird belief that you should not make money from breeding pedigree cats, and I have a completely different idea and theory about that. So if you want to go back to the podcast and listen to that one, you'll kind of understand where I'm coming from on this topic. But when selling a kitten with breeding rights, it's totally up to you how much you want to charge for that right to reproduce from that cat. And what is your health guarantee, what is your replacement guarantee? If you do have to replace it, take that into consideration. Do they have to be spayed and neutered before you replace? Under what conditions will you replace? So these are things that you might want to deep dive on and think about. So how do I price this kitten with breeding rights? I've seen different ways people price. Some just tack on a fee for breeding rights, and some will double the fee of a kitten if they're selling breeding rights. So, again, completely up to you. It's your choice. You don't even have to charge more for breeding rights, but it's definitely worth adding a premium onto your regular pet price if you plan on selling the kitten to another breeder. And last, your health guarantees. So your health guarantees for a kitten with breeding rights are going to be a little bit different than if you're selling them as a pet. Now, the same rules will apply as far as, you want them to take them to the vet within a certain number of days, and that you have this many days to say, yes, I like the cat's condition, it's in good shape, etc. And then your regular health guarantee. But there's one additional clause that may be included in your contract about reproduction and whether or not the cat is able to or willing to reproduce. You have to decide if you're going to replace a cat under those conditions, because sometimes, in both males and females, the cats aren't able to reproduce for whatever reason. So you have to, specify your replacement guarantee in great detail in a contract and also discuss it with the breeder that you're going to do business with. It's always better to just communicate and be upfront and open and honest and don't hide anything and just tackle all of the issues that may come up now and in the future and know how it's going to be handled so that there's no question. So something that you want to think about is, what is your replacement guarantee? And you can feel free to post questions in the No Judgment Zone Facebook group about, what are some scenarios when you need to replace a cat that's been sold for breeding, and get some answers from people who have real life experiences and say, okay, yeah, I didn't think about that. And with a pet, sometimes we just cover like genetic diseases, and if the cat happens to pass away within X amount of time. It's a little different when it comes to breeding, especially if you're charging a premium for that. You want to sell them a quality cat that's going to do well in their cattery, and if something goes wrong, just handle that and address that now up front and willingly, so that everybody is just on the same positive page. There's no reason to fight it and argue about it. Just specify it up front, be clear about it in your contract, and discuss it in person so there's no squabbles and everyone knows what to expect. So hopefully you have some ideas on things that you can think about if you are considering selling one of your kittens with breeding rights. Feel free to always ask questions in our Facebook group, the No Judgment Zone Cat Breeder Community. We are here for you and we support you, and we want you to succeed always. Thank you again for listening to the Cat Breeder Sensei Says podcast. Do us a huge favor and leave us a review on the platform that you listen to our podcast on, and share this with your friends. If you have any breeder friends, new or experienced, that you think might enjoy listening to the podcast or would like to be a guest, have them reach out to us and check out our podcast. They can go to catbreedersensei.com or look us up on any of the podcast platforms. And I will see you next time. See you later. Bye.